Howdy folks, this is Shane. I've just spent the last 30 minutes testing out another Blues Jr. at a different shop here in Melbourne, Australia. And from what I can tell, all of them seem to have the same issue. I'm going to go back just a little bit right now and tell you a little bit about what I've noticed with Blues Juniors. And this is only with the current generation. All the older ones seem to not have this problem. So there's two problems with them. I'll get into what actually happens. So a while back I purchased the Fender Mustang GT amp, the 200, and it stunk. So I took it back, swapped it for a Blues Jr. Straight out of the box, had a brand new box, took it home, opened it, and anytime I had the reverb on, there was this horrible noise coming through the amp. It kind of, for those who don't know what it is, it's kind of like a buzz. And it wasn't valve or tube related, it was just literally something in the reverb circuit isn't right. So if you turn the amp up, it becomes way more prominent. There's certain frequencies that you play in your notes that you play that really trigger it worse than others. So it doesn't happen all the time, but if you bend a note and let it sustain, you'll hear this really kind of noise coming out of the tank. So I swapped it over for another Blues Jr., which did exactly the same thing. So I took that amp back to the shop, explained the problem, and the guy in the store said, you know what, all of them are doing exactly the same thing. So I thought, all right, I'm not gonna get a Blues Jr. that's faulty straight off the shelf and then have to have it repaired straight away. So I thought what I'd do is swap it over for a guitar. 3 or 4 months has gone by now, maybe longer, since I ended up owning that initial Blues Jr. I just went and tested another one. Now this was the one with the Jensen speaker, so it's the tweed one. It looks super cool, it sounds great, but it had exactly the same problem, but it had two problems. Not only did it still suffer that reverb tank fault, it buzzed like nobody's business on certain frequencies, and I wasn't even using the fat switch, so even at lower volumes, there's this oscillation problem with their combos, and I've just seen it time and time again. So if you're thinking of buying a Blues Jr., my suggestion would be this: play it at all kinds of different volumes and see what sort of sound you get. Bend a note, let it sustain, and see if you get this scratchy, weird thing. After chatting to one of the guys in the stores, it was blatantly obvious that I wasn't alone in thinking about this problem. He said the majority of the Fender amps he's received lately have all had problems with their valves. It's funny that he mentioned this because I kind of felt like maybe their quality control was going downhill only on their amps. Their guitars have been great on the most part, so I can't really say anything about those. But in terms of their amps, in Australia specifically, every single Bassbreaker amp that I've had a chance to test in numerous shops in Australia here, they've all had the same problem. They all rattle. Anytime you hit a specific note, you'll hear this sort of like faulty tube sound coming out of the amp, which totally sucks. So man, I don't know what's going on with Fender in Australia. As I mentioned, after talking to some of the shop owners who can't go on camera for obvious reasons, they were basically saying that, yeah, this is pretty common. Nearly every amp we've had by Fender lately has been faulty. This really begs the question of, is there actually any quality control that goes into the stuff that Australia receives? Because it feels like there isn't. So I don't know, man, I feel like a lot of the more recent amps that are coming out by Fender lack the sort of quality that you might expect from a company that's been making amps for so long. A friend of mine who's a huge gear collector once said to me, you're better off getting stuff direct from the States because Australia gets the arse end of the Fender gear. And I almost feel like that's true. Either they need to step up their game and actually test their amps before they box them up and test them properly, or they're just totally oblivious to the problems. So it's either this reverb tank rattle in the Blues Juniors, the Bassbreaker amps nearly all have faulty tubes straight out of the shop. One of the Bassbreaker amps that I saw in another shop actually had one of the two speakers that were loaded into it actually fell out and into the cabinet. That is so bad. You know, this stuff can't be getting damaged that much in shipping. I have a hard time believing that shipping is the cause of all amp problems. I really don't think in today's day and age that shipping an amplifier is going to cause that much damage. I guess every now and then a pallet might be dropped, but it feels like nearly every shop that I've tested Blues Juniors in lately over the last 3 months, or even those Bassbreaker amps, have all been faulty. This is just a bit of a disgraceful effort. Let me know your thoughts on this in your part of the world and whether or not you see or have heard similar issues in amps. I'm getting sick of testing amps that have a rattle or a buzz or a faulty reverb. It's pretty disgraceful. For a company that's been making amps for so long, they should know better, and they should actually put a little bit of time and maybe a little bit more effort into their quality control. I know a lot of their amps are made in Mexico. I highly doubt whoever's doing the quality control is doing their job properly, but maybe it's something else along the line. Maybe it's a faulty component in all of these amps.